Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. I'm going to apologize in advance. Mia is really barky and growly and she's just miserable. So hopefully she's not going to go crazy while I'm filming. All right, so I got an email from Jackie. I got permission to use her name and I'm just going to read it out. Hi, love your videos on YouTube. I have started painting during COVID and basically teaching myself, watching techniques and playing with blending. I'm in the process of painting a German short-haired pointer dog. I'm having trouble with their coloring and shading. It's a rich liver color mixed with grays and little blacks. Any suggestions for working with that range? I've been using acrylics, burnt sienna, burnt umber, phthalo green, ultramarine blue, and some white. Trying not to use black. I've watched your video on making black with other colors a ton. Thanks, any tips would help. And thank you so much for sending that message, Jackie. And then what I did is I replied back to Jackie asking for photographs of what she's trying to paint. So I'm going to put I'm going to get out of this and get rid of that. And I threw the photographs into Lightroom. So this is one of the reasons why working from photographs can be your worst enemy. I don't know if you can see the difference. Okay, see the difference? The colors are much richer on the phone and my camera is shaking. So with printing your photograph, what you want to do is you want to print it, and this is just cheap paper. For creating art, working from live is the best, but you know what? We don't live in a perfect world. Then the next best thing from working live would be working from a photograph on a digital device and then printing it. But printing it needs to go on photo paper at the best quality setting. But if you have a bad photo, you're going to get a bad print. The reason why I printed this, I'm going to show you a tip on how to do color matching with this. So just to show you again, the colors are much richer, and you know, the problem is, I don't know if you can see. Sorry, Mia started barking. So I threw it into Lightroom because I've got the other photograph is this one here. And this is another reason. Now this looks like it was taken, I can see grid lines in here, so I'm thinking maybe a screen in a window or a screen door. But although the dogs are beautiful, it's not the greatest photo because look at all the red in the background. So the background reflection color off the snow is affecting the color of the dogs. Now, if this is the color that you want to do the painting, that's fine. Just work with that. But I would turn around and now I use Lightroom CC. A free version would be using Snapseed on your phone. I would first turn around and create this as black and white so you can see the true values, the lightness and darkness. And then turn around and add some filters or just to remove this pinkish tone. Because that, like I said, that is going to affect, because I know from the email that Jackie was using a bit of red violet. And red violet is more of a cool color. But if you're trying to get a reddish brown, that's going to give you a little bit of conflict. And then at the same time is that you can't make one color for, you know, both these dogs. You have to make for one, this one here, then this one here, and this one here. So they're all going to be different mixes. What I can say though is I'm pretty sure that I can do a color match on all of these by just using these colors here. And what I've got, I'm going to be using the Decor Art Traditions colors because they got the Permanent Alizarin Crimson. So we have Ultramarine Blue, Permanent Alizarin Crimson, Naphthal Red Light, then Burnt Sienna, Burnt Umber, Carbon Black, and Opaque Titanium White. So I'm going to give you a forewarning. This is going to be a long video because it's a detailed explanation video, especially for beginners with color mixing or where you're having trouble. So for anybody that's watching that is looking for a shortcut, this isn't it. Okay, I'm going to be very detailed in this video to teach you how to do some matching. First of all, I'm using black as an alternative because black with any color will work. But black is a way to take semi-transparent colors and make them opaque if you're looking for a black, like an alternate version of a chromatic black. The reason why I have two reds, I have a red that leans towards blue and I have a red that leans towards orange, because depending on how you want to color this, This is a brown that's more warm, and these are browns that are more cool because of the violet. And violet has blue. Blue is on the cooler side of the color wheel. And so that's why I have the two reds. So it's a matter of doing one for this one and one for this one. And then there's also creating the chromatic black. Could we create chromatic black with ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, which is my go-to? But because burnt sienna is really light and we're looking for something really dark, burnt umber, it will likely be a better choice. First of all, it's still a reddish brown, but it's much darker. So we're going to get that. To take burnt sienna and burnt umber to get a chromatic black, you have to add more blue to it to get something really dark. And it'll be visible. It'll be more blue than brown. So that's why burnt umber, value-wise, even though this makes colors without adding black or white, by going with a darker brown, you're going to naturally get it darker without having to add black and without having a major shift in color. It'll make more sense when I explain it. All right, so that takes care of that. So just these colors, and when the reason why I'm using the Traditions, I could have used the media fluid acrylics, but they're more for mixed media. With the colors, you want to make sure, depending on the brand you're using, you have the color index information on the tube, because that will tell you exactly what's in the tube, and then the opacity and the chroma, saturation, how intense. I mean, you can do all those studies on your own, but it just gives you information about the paint. What you don't want is something like sapphire blue, because there's no such thing as a pigment called sapphire blue. It's made up of a bunch of colors, and if you don't have the color index information on it, if you're doing a precise match for a pet portrait, a human portrait, whatever, you need to know what's in that pigment. Okay, so I'm going to put these just back here. Now, for the reason why I printed this, I like working from digital photos, not printed, because I can get 1,000 of you out there to print this photo, and it's going to turn out differently on each one. Same thing is that 1,000 of you looking at this digital photo on your monitors, it's going to be completely different. Our digital devices, our monitors, our phones are all calibrated differently. That's just nature. Unless there's one device and there's a law that makes everything universal, everything's configured differently. So that's why it's always best when you're working from this, work from your device and make the adjustments on your device, or work from your print and work from this. Don't look at a video and try to match to the video, because what you see is not what the artist sees and not what everybody else sees. It's always best to work with what you have. So taking the print, and then what you can do to do your testing is that you can paint on plastic. And I want to show you, almost fell on the ground. This is just a backing off a rubber stamp. You can take that. Now this is a little bit more challenging. You can put the plastic right on top of your phone, and then you can put your paint mark right on here. Now with a brush, it's not going to move. If you start touching it with your finger, it's going to move. So you can take your mix, and then you can just put it here. I can do that, and I don't know if you guys can see the lines going through here. So that's something. It's either a screen or a photograph. This was taken from a TV. The camera took a picture off the TV, but I see these lines here, and that's why this is not the best picture for that. So, and then from here, and then you can put a little bit of masking tape, and then you can just color mix this way at different areas. That way you're mixing exactly from your own digital reference. Cute. But you're mixing from your own digital photo. So that's by using a little piece of plastic on your phone. So you can also use, from a print, you can use a page protector. That's my go-to, is put your sheet inside a page protector and use the paint on the page protector. If you don't have a page protector, now I've got plexiglass. You don't want to use this type of plexiglass. This is frosted. It will change what you see. See how it's because it's frosted, so it changes the saturation of it. So you want to use plexi that's completely transparent. I unfortunately don't have any. I was using this for my reverse glass painting, so I'm going to put that away. But clear plexi. page protector, or if you've got stencils, use stencil packaging. I'm just going to show you this because I don't want to take that out. And then you can use that. But look at the difference. I mean, it's you know what? If I look at this, it's actually better quality with the plastic because it gives a bit of a gloss. It's like putting a gloss varnish on it, and then paint on that. Now with this here, it's a little bit thin because it's plastic packaging. This isn't too bad. This may rip, so when you do your painting and when you're done, take a baby wipe and just wipe the paint off. But just don't use a palette knife to scrape it off, otherwise you'll tear the packaging. Okay, so I'm gonna put that away. All right, so let's put this in here. But again, not the best quality photo, but you got to use with what you've got. And same with the page protectors. If you're going to use the thick stuff, make sure you get them the ones that are crystal clear. Stuff at the dollar store may not be crystal clear. I don't know. You'd have to take a look, but you want to make sure they're not frosted or anti-glare. You want them crystal clear. Problem with video, I mean, this is what happens. Okay, but this is the best choice, working from that. And then preferably if this is clean, and then you just put that on top, and then you can do your color matching from there. All right, so let me think, sorry, it's got to tilt this. Let me turn that. So now we have our Poochie in black and white. So that look at the values. Okay. There we go. So that will tell you right there what you need to look at. So what I would do is, take the picture, and when you throw it into Snapseed, or I think there's a Visco. I'm not a Mac person. You guys know that. I only know Android and I only know Windows. So if you're on a Mac, unfortunately, you're going to have to figure it out what you can use for apps. But I know Snapseed is available for both. Convert it to black and white, and then, you can use that as a judge. Now, what you could also do is throw it into your laptop. And I don't know if Snapseed's available for a laptop, but whatever apps that you're using, put it into there. That way you have a bigger screen. And then you could put a page protector over top your screen, and you can do your color matching there. So that's what you're looking at for value. So you know where the areas that are going to be dark, you know the areas that are going to be the lightest. Come on. There we go. I keep having to flip my phone. It's a little bit harder to see when it's color, but when you convert it to black and white, especially when it's a bit of high contrast, it's easier to see. So what you can do, two ways, is that you can create the painting in just black and white with gray tones, and then do a glaze on top for color after the fact, because then it won't matter about opacity. So you can do that. We're going to actually do color matching to the actual photograph. So let me just go like this. Bring you down. Come on. Here we go. So you can tell the differences here. Now for the purpose of the lesson, this is going to be easier to work with because my phone is so small. Well, it's a small phone. My big tablet, yeah, it went to the recycling depot. So any of you guys out there, okay, no Mac suggestions, no iPad suggestions, because, I'm not a Mac person. But any of you that are on the Android, have Android tablets, what are you guys using and what do you like best about them? Or better yet, what tablets are you using that you don't like? It'll help me choose, because I have to choose another one. All right, so let's go with our mixes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take this out because it's a glare, and I'm going to paint right on the paper. All right, so let's see if I can get... Okay, you guys shouldn't see glare there. Let's start off with now when doing color matching, there's a set of questions that I always ask. You look at your reference material, whether it's live or photo. You say, what color is this? It's brown. Now, then you go to your palette and you pick the closest color. Well, the closest color, now I'm only going to show color matching on a couple places, but it's the same exercise. So if we look at this, you say brown. Well, brown, the closest brown to this is burnt umber. Then you say, okay, this color, is it lighter or darker than burnt umber? Well, this is darker, obviously. Is it brighter or duller than burnt umber? This is duller. And then you say, okay, well, does it lean more? Now, if you take a look where burnt umber leans on the color wheel, then you say, does this color here, does it lean more this way or more this way in the color wheel? Make that decision. So you've got light, dark, brighter, duller. Which way does it lean on the color wheel? Okay, what's the closest color? And then with those questions, you come up with your mix, compare. Then you ask those questions again. Then you say, okay, with what I just put down, is it lighter or darker, brighter or duller? Okay, does it lean a certain way on the color wheel? And then you analyze and analyze and analyze. And especially for beginners, you're going to find that's going to be your best way of learning. Instead of just watching, you actually have to do it. So let's try. So I've got my paint here on. I know you guys are going to ask. This is a Cucina no stick baking mat, and just because it's easier to clean. So, and I'm using a gray palette. Now I know there's a glare. I can't do anything about it. Sorry. So burnt umber. So we take burnt umber, we go here. Now you have to wait for it to dry because right now it's shiny, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, okay, dry. And Joe flipped my desk around. I was like, I don't even have a heat gun hooked up. When you're doing this on actual paper, the paint is going to sink inside the paper and it's going to make it more saturated anyway. So be careful with that too. So doing this, you're going to get a close match, but because it's actually going to affect the paper, that's why working on plastic is nicer. I'm looking at this saying, okay, it's not quite dark enough. Well, and it's not quite red enough. I'm thinking, okay, well, if I just take a little bit of permanent alizarin crimson, that may be even too much. That'll make it a little bit more red. Now, this is going to make it more red on the blue side. So this is going to be a brown that's a bit cooler. He's inside, and I can see all the ambient lighting here, so this needs to be a little bit warmer. And I'm just going to put that over here. Oh, and the other way, I can't believe it, forgot to do this. Take some of that ugly white scrapbook paper, and you can do this, and then you can do that. The good way of doing this is that when you find your colors, you can actually write little notes, and then you can glue this into your journal. Now, with doing this, one thing that you want to do too is you want to check your values by adding a little bit of white. But remember, you have to let it dry. Oils are a different story because oils typically, when they dry, when all the oxidization happens when they dry, that's how it's going to look. With acrylics, it's not the same. Acrylics, when they dry darker, and it's more of a matte finish, depending on what you're using. So I'm looking here, squinting my eyes. Okay, a bit too much white in there, so let me go into a little bit more of this mixture here. So this is basically how you, look at that. Look at that. There we go. Now this is to a photograph. If I'm going to go to my digital print, not even close. Sorry, I don't want to hit the phone. I need to, there we go. So with the digital print, it's much richer. So you have to pick that one reference material and stick with that. Okay, so don't have 5 different printouts of this because it's all going to change. And same thing where the table I'm at, if you're doing precise, if you're just having fun, whatever, this doesn't apply. If you're doing a precise color match, you have to make sure you do it at the same table with the same lighting, because I can turn around, now watch this, and I've gotten hate emails for some of you saying it's a load of crap, but watch. If I just forget to turn this light on, well, it's different, right? Now watch this. So I put that light on, but oh, look at this. The overhead light. Very subtle, but still enough of a difference. So make sure your lighting is consistent as well, okay? Are you dry yet? Almost, almost. So I'm looking here, it's still too red. So what can we do? Well, we can turn it around with burnt umber. We can add a little bit of blue to it. And we'll see how that goes. And then we can put it here. Yeah, this is a little bit duller, which probably will work better. Now I do have a plastic screen. I should just paint on my phone. Where are we? That has to dry, but it doesn't really match anything. Did you hear that noise? That was my LED light. I think one of the bulbs blew. See, it doesn't really match anything. So again, work with one reference piece. So we've taken the burnt umber, we've added a little bit more red to it, the alizarin crimson to make it cool it down a bit. That's probably not the choice for this because this is inside. Well, what happens? I am a class today. What happens if we take burnt umber and then we work with Naphthal Red Light? Okay, super duper intense color. Be very careful. And then, see, this one actually didn't turn out too bad. It's a little bit too light. So let's do that. And let's do this. And you know what? Look. See how it changes the color? I have too much water in my brush. So what you could do is you can apply another layer to get it opaque. That's another question that I know it's going to come up. The transparency. So we have lightness, darkness, brightness, dullness, and then the transparency. The transparency, when you're starting your initial layer, some people like to paint primarily with the transparent layers of color just to block the stuff in. My camera's really shaking. And some prefer an opaque finish. The one thing that I would tell you when you're painting is avoid painting like that. Okay, what you want to do is get some soft edges like this. Okay, especially when you're painting an animal. Get some soft edges. Don't get those hard lines. Now, you may see, well, I have an ear here, it's a hard line. It's not, it's a soft line. So remember when you're doing your painting, make it soft, because that way when you come in with additional colors, it's going to flow a lot easier, a lot better. So this is still a little bit too intense. It's not dull enough. Then from here, what we can do, well, we can turn around and we can say, well, we can add a speck of black. Don't really want to add black, but we can turn around and add more blue. Blue is going to make it brighter. Red's going to make it brighter. We need to dull it down. Well, you can turn around, you can say, well, oh, shoot. I forgot a color. No. Phthalo green. Why phthalo green? And that's just a drop. Okay. You guys should know this if you've been following my color mixing videos. Burnt umber is brown that leans towards red. Anytime we want to dull something down, we want to add its complement. We want to add green. What green? Green that leans towards yellow or green that leans towards blue? I would say, because we want to make this a little bit warmer, I would tend to take phthalo green that leans towards yellow and then try that. But such a small amount. Let me just add white to that so you can see the true underlying color. Yeah, that is much duller. And what this looks like now is raw umber. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So it's just about, and I'm only using these colors, like I've only used burnt umber, permanent cleanser and crimson, Naphthal Red Light, a little bit of blue, just to testing, and then just now the phthalo green. So you don't have to have a whack load of colors. It's just about experimenting and experimenting and experimenting. Now this color that I did here, this last color, is actually a little bit too light. Now remember, you're painting on paper, it's not going to look the same. That's why you can use the swatches, you can use the plastic. So you're going to have to find out what works for you. So I start again, burnt umber. Now let me take a little bit of phthalo green. I look here. That's actually not bad. So with the phthalo green is going to neutralize the red that's in the raw umber, but because the phthalo green leans towards yellow, you're still going to keep it more on the warm side. That actually turned out pretty good. Now let's test this again. It's neutral. It's more neutral, not as red. It's a tiny, 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 tiny bit, but it's more neutral. So you can turn around and say, okay, well, this mixture I just made here, can I use this someplace else? It's a little bit dark. Go with a bit more white. This is also a little bit more red, so you can turn around and say, okay, can I use this someplace else? Right there, that might be that little nice little spot right here. Might be a nice little area for that. And back here, right here. But I think I need to add a little bit more. You notice I said I think I need, because I don't know. And then a speck of phthalo green. Where am I matching to? Squinting my eyes. I think it might be a little bit dark, so we know that acrylics dry darker, so I'm going to lighten it a little bit. That's why using swatch cards, sometimes makes it a little bit easier, because once they dry, then you can compare, but you have to make notes. And these are really small because I do so much of this. But what you can do is on a bigger card and just put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and put your mixes beside that. Then on a notepad, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just put down the colors. Ideally, videotape yourself doing it, because that way you can refer back to, and you don't have to waste your time taking notes. This is a little bit too neutral. Need to add a little bit more red to it. And I'm thinking in here, I can try using the existing color again. See, try, because I don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to work with the Alizarin Crimson. That might be, I have a glare. You don't have a glare, I have a glare. Okay, run out of paint. And a speck. The one thing that'll kill it is if too much phthalo green. A little bit of white. There we go. Probably could be a little bit whiter. The value needs to be a little bit lighter. Let me just make a little speck of water in my brush. Blot it in the paper towel. Let's just go over that. Yeah, this is typically not how you would do the painting, but I'm just seeing if I can make that adjustment right in here. Let's see how that goes. Alrighty. Can I use this color anywhere else? I see a little bit of violet in here, but it's indoor lighting, and I know it's not violet. It's the printer. And I'm thinking I'm just going to stick with the Alizarin Crimson. I'm going to go in the back of the card. It's always about analyzing. That's too brown. That's too brown. Oh, but might work out here. Right there. Yep. Now, the color matching I'm doing is primarily color matching. When you're actually painting, you're going to make a lot more paint than this, and then do your actual painting, and you're going to paint it. You're going to block in the color first, then you're going to add your first layer of detail, second layer of detail, third layer of detail, and the number of layer of details is depending on how photorealistic you want your painting to be. I don't like painting that way. I want my artwork to look like artwork. I don't like my paintings to look like they're photographs to me, then just take a picture and put it up on the wall. Graphite drawings for me, though, are a different story. When I was doing people portraits and pet portraits, my graphite drawings were very, very detailed. But that's your own personal style. So you would just do as many layers of details as you see fit. Then the final layer will be accents. But with each layer that you create your painting on with your colors, you're always going to be analyzing. Take a look. Is it lighter? Is it darker? Is it brighter? Is it duller? Is it more transparent? Is it more opaque? Which way on the color wheel does it lay? Okay? Make your color, apply it. Ask yourself the questions. Adjust, make a new color. And just doing that enough times, it's just going to become a process. Okay? Now, so you get the idea basically on you get the idea on that. So now let me bring up the other little ones. There we go. So these ones here, now what I would do when working with these little guys, where's my plastic sheets? I would turn around and I would ask first. So if this was a commission, I would turn around and I would ask first, hey, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, Miss Customer, do you have a better photograph? And especially if it's a memorial commission, when I was doing commissions, they would say no. And if you're doing a commission for a memorial portrait, be very careful how you ask the questions, because always assume that it's a worst case scenario where they don't have anything. I would turn around and say, do you have photographs of the dogs that are taken, different lighting situations, indoor, outdoor? And that way, because when you see a whole bunch of different photographs, you get a general idea what the natural color of the dog is, especially if the dog has passed on. You can't get details, but if the dogs are still with us, back then I asked customers, can you splay the hair on your dog and take a picture? And I actually did a video is it Mia? Yeah, with Mia, how to do that. How to get a true color representation. So with this here, I could turn around now and say, okay, well, what color do I see? Well, I see burnt umber. Where's my little plastic piece? Now I've got fingerprints on this. So I've got burnt umber, and I'm just going to work with burnt umber right off the bat without any color mixing. Sorry. Okay, so let me just put that on there. The plastic, because it's a no-stick plastic, so you could do that. Let it dry though, or just stick with the cards and wait for that to dry. So with the ones that I did before, this one here, works with this. What color it is, I have no idea. So filming wise, I would just rewind the video till I found that or take notes. This one here actually is pretty good right in there. But looking at these colors, now did you see that? How did that happen? I don't know how that happened. The camera went dark and then it went light again, or the display. I have this set to low blue light. So that also affects everything. So again, depends on your device. And I know I'm repeating myself over and over and over and over and over again, because I know in a couple of weeks I'm going to get an email from some of you saying, I tried this technique and it looks different on my phone. Yeah, it's going to look different on your phone. It's depending on your device. Okay, make sure you understand that. Don't work from the video you're seeing. Use the techniques, the ideas, but then apply it to your own device. Burnt umber right off the bat is actually pretty good for, see how it's getting darker? Burnt umber right here is actually pretty good. Look at that. This is a brand new phone. I've got something screwed up in the settings. Yeah, I've got something screwed up in the settings. There's a sensor here, I bet. Yeah, so it's here. See, now it's not going to do it. You bugger. There we go. And if you're an iPhone user, please don't tell me, oh, it's because it's an Android. That would be my son doing that. He criticizes everything on an Android because it's an Android, not an iPhone. But anyway, so burnt umber is pretty good. Now from there, it just needs to be darkened a little bit. So I can turn around and say, well, if I want to darken burnt umber, I can go with a little bit of ultramarine blue. And you know what? If you're an iPhone user or an iPad user, don't send me hate mail, because that not a fan of Mac devices. It's a personal preference. It's a personal preference. There we go. And that's wet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave that right there, and then you'll see how it changes when it dries. So by doing swatches, from what I've done so far, and we're 35 minutes into it, I would say primarily the colors that I would stick with the dogs would be burnt umber, and then for the inside doggy, burnt umber, alizarin crimson, and phthalo green, and then burnt umber, alizarin crimson, and blue. Based on this photograph. Based on the digital one, it'll be a little bit different. So based on the photograph, because the colors here match up really, really well. For this outside photo, I'm looking here and it's still not quite dark enough, and I know exactly what color I need to add. So this one here was just the burnt umber with a bit of phthalo blue, and I know I need to shift it because asking the questions, is it lighter or darker? Well, my mix is too light. Is it brighter or duller? My mix is too dull. And for transparency, at this point, doesn't matter because we're just color matching. It has a bit more blue in it, but a bluey red. So I'm thinking alizarin crimson, or alizarin crimson and a bit of ultramarine blue. So let's do that. So burnt umber, because that way it's more of a violet because of all the violet that's around there. And that's naturally going to make it dark. Let's go here. Oh, yeah. There we go. Wait for that to dry. I do know that as I'm putting this on, there is more of a transparency. That's going to affect it. Why? I gotta get Joe to fix this freaking camera. It's wobbling. Because the paper is white, always do your swatches on white paper. Always, 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 always. Or gray paper. But because this paper is white, as I'm putting it on, because the brush is damp, which naturally makes the paint mix a little bit more transparent, not by much, is that the white is showing through so I can see where it's transparent. The ideal thing, just add another layer to make it truly opaque. And then let it dry. But see the difference? Remember, acrylics dry darker, so try not to color match. Unless you're working with oils, try not to color match exactly wet paint to your digital. Wait for it to dry and then go. Oils, you can color match right as you go. But this looks like it's not too bad. See, look at the difference. So I think we've got a winner there. Okay, well, what I got a winner there, I can see right in here that there's light areas here. Well, I can take that same mix and I'm going to try and take a little bit of white because we want to lighten the value. That may not be enough. You gotta wait for it to dry. That actually works out well in right in here. There's a little line where the ear curves over right in here. That mixture works out really well. So now where the ear curves, the light is hitting it right here. So I can turn around, well, let me add a little bit more white. Oops, too much. But this is a good example to show you the true underlying color. It's got a little bit of violet in it. Then I can turn around. I already know it's too light, so I'm asking myself the questions. Lighter or darker, this mix I know is going to be too light. Is it brighter or duller? I think it's going to be okay. I think it's going to be a pretty good match on that. And the transparency I'm not going to worry about because we're just doing color matching for this. When you're doing your actual painting, that's when you're going to ask yourself the question about the transparency. And the transparency is going to be because of the layers of colors. So you're going to have your block and layer, and as you start adding your accent layers or your detail layers, that's when you're going to ask yourself about the transparency, because the bottom layer will show through the color and it will affect the mix. But I could use that probably around here somewhere. Right there. Right there. That's actually pretty good right there. So if I have to darken it a little bit. So you notice I'm not going by formulas. I already know that I'm going to take a little bit of that. And I take a little bit of alizarin crimson. And I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue. And go, oh dear, I used too much crimson and too much blue. Whatever will I do? I'll just add more burnt umber. And I know some of you are saying, oh, you're wasting paint. You know what? You cannot put a price on education. I don't care who you are. You can't put a price on education. You are not going to learn anything by watching this video saying, okay, now I know how to do it. You have to apply it. Otherwise, you're going to forget. So don't think of it as wasting paint. Think of it as an investment into you learning. Oh, right there, right there, right there, right there. Remember, you have to wait for it to dry. See the difference though? These are dry, this is still wet. Huge difference. But then take that mix and then go around. Now, what I see here when I'm looking at my phone is different than what I see on my computer monitor right there. So I have to make sure consciously, I have to consciously look at my phone, not look at the monitor. So on my phone, that is a perfect match to the nose. This mix here, right here, where it's starting to dry. It's a perfect match. When I look at the monitor, it's not too bad. Whoopsie. Get rid of that white part there. Yeah, see on the monitor in front, this looks really, really red. But on my phone, it's not so red. Or violet, I should say. So that actual mix is pretty good. So again, goes back to the burnt umber, the alizarin crimson, the blue. Yeah, so I have yet to do anything with burnt sienna. Burnt sienna, I think, might be a little bit light. Again, might, try. You got to try it. So if we take, let's go to the typical chromatic black. Burnt sienna, ultramarine blue. I always create equal values. And it will always change because I might have more water in my brush. I may pick up more burnt sienna or more ultramarine blue. I have to try it and I have to see, and then I have to adjust it. So let's try this one here. Now I'm going to use the grid paper this time on that side so you can see. Initially, it is more transparent because of the blue. So blue, the red, Naphthal Red Light as well. That one, that one, that one, that one, and these are all okay. So with these colors here, they're all semi-transparent. These ones here are all opaque. So if you're primarily making your mixes with these, as you're painting, the color that's underneath will affect your next layer of paint because these are more transparent. If you're adding a neutral color like one of these, it'll become more opaque. It's going to affect it less. Okay? So although you can take, let's say, permanent alizarin crimson and phthalo green to make a chromatic black, you guys couldn't see that, you can take alizarin crimson and phthalo green to make a chromatic black. It's going to be very transparent, so whatever's underneath will affect that color. Again, try it and see how it works out for you. So let's add some white to that to see the true underlying color. And it is a perfect gray. Perfect gray. Look at that. So I could turn around and say, okay, puppies, we didn't really focus on any of the light colors. Everything I look at with the whites of the dogs has a red overcast to it, or violet overcast to it. I don't know if that's accurate or not. So here though, the white overcast, or the overcast is more of a brown. But there is no overcast here. It's more of a white with a little bit of violet. And then here it's yellow. Now that could be the light reflecting off this dog. Makes it more warm. This is very cool because the light, there's nothing blocking any of the light. And this one here, because his snout is probably casting a shadow onto his throat here. So obviously there are nothing for this. Or is there? When painting a dog, you can't just paint it white. It doesn't work that way. Because you need to get all these little subtle nuances, these little bits and bobs in here, because fur is like this. What I do when I'm painting a dog that's white, I always paint with a dark undercoat. So I would use a gray. That's whether it leans towards blue, leans towards red, depends on the dog. And then I would use a lighter value, start creating the detail. Another lighter value, creating detail, but not covering everything, because that's the way you get the natural layers for the fur. So I can turn around and say, well, with this here, I would make this a little bit warmer. So I can turn around and say, I need to add a bit more red to that, or a little bit more brown to that gray. I think I just mixed it in the wrong pile of paint, but that's okay. No, you know what? Scratch that. because there's alizarin crimson in there. Too much alizarin crimson. Let's do it again. Burnt sienna, ultramarine blue. Mix that together. And I'm not editing out any of the mistakes I'm making because it's all about learning. Color mixing is something, you know what? I can do this for the rest of my life. I absolutely love, because it's all about experimenting. And the more you experiment, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the more confident you'll be. And the more confident you'll be, it's going to show up in your work. I don't use the term practice makes perfect anymore because there's no such thing as perfection. We could always continue to learn. No such thing as perfection. Okay, so we've got that. Now I need to add a bit of white to that to get my gray. A little bit darker. Ah, yes. And now, because that gray has a little bit more blue in it, I'm going to turn around. I'm going to take a little bit more. Let's see. I'm going to go with a little bit more burnt sienna. And if you guys remember, when I made my chromatic black with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, when you make that chromatic black and you add more burnt sienna, you get something closer to burnt umber. When you add to that base of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, when you add more blue to it, you get something like Payne's gray. Here we go. So you have another mixture. So from there, I could turn around and I could do the block in, you know, for here because it's warmer. But then when it comes to the cooler side, this area here, I would turn around and take my chromatic black of the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue, but I would add more blue to it. But because there's that cast, that reddish cast to it, I can turn around and pick up a speck of permanent alizarin crimson. Not a lot. You notice we're still working with the same colors. The phthalo green, you can probably even get away with not even using it, but it all depends. Ah, nice. Nice, nice. Nice. Beauty. I could probably even go a little bit more blue, a little bit more red on that. Again, see? Probably. Because I don't know. This is going to be even better. A bit more white. Yeah, this is it. That's it. So that will be a perfect undercoat for that. Now I'm going to let this one dry. Let me just paint this one here, and I'm going to show you what I mean about using an undercoat. So you want to make sure that's dry. So I would paint this area right here, the white area here, that's obviously redder. And then as we go here, you could add a little bit more red to it to make it more violet. But this area right here, this one's going to be more the burnt sienna. Add more burnt sienna to the mixture. And here you're going to add more ultramarine blue to the mixture. And as you go down, you're going to add a little bit more of the alizarin crimson over here. Not Naphthal Red Light, because Naphthal Red Light is a red orange, and that'll neutralize the mixture. So right in here, so you've got that mix, and now what you can do is take that existing mix and you're going to add a little bit of white to it. And you would do this for as many layers as you want. And then I would turn around and I'm not going to go through a brushstroke tutorial, but just when you're starting to add your fur, again, you're going to use the right proper brush and all that stuff. This is more to show you about how color affects layer upon layer upon layer. Remember, we're not painting like that. We're painting light strokes. Now, as this dries, the color that's underneath is affecting the color we just put on top. See, I put a lot of paint here. See how it's more opaque? And then what you're going to do when that dries, you can take a little bit more white. And then come in and let it dry. And you're not going to cover everything. Remember, fur is this. I should get Mia over here. I can't pick her up, put her on the table, but if you have an animal, dogs are a lot more patient than cats. When Chaos was with us, when I did a demonstration with Chaos, she bit me. But Mia loves being on camera. But take your dog's fur and just splay it around, and all the colors. If I could get my hair color dyed the way Mia's hair is, oh, it'd be amazing. Her fur, she has a very light undercoat, then it goes to red, then it goes to brown, then the tips are black. Do you know what it would cost at a hair salon to get your hair like that? Oh my God. But it's all layers. So you have to paint it that way. Okay, and make sure each layer has time to dry. Then you can go on with another layer and you can add more white. Now, if you're working this in oils, it's a different technique. Okay, just I'm focusing on acrylics. So, and also don't forget, you can always wipe off your brush on a paper towel. You know, splay your bristles out. It's better to apply not enough paint because you can always add another layer. But if you put too much paint on there, you're gonna you have to get into correcting. I'm gonna pick up just a little bit more. And when I was formally teaching, I did a demonstration on using a round brush to paint animal fur versus using specialty brushes. Because I was getting some questions from students in the membership site, which that I've retired from formal teaching. So about spending the $50-$60 on these specialty brushes, you don't need to do that. They are nice, and I do have some here. Maybe I'll do a demonstration. If you guys want to see a demonstration on using specialty brushes, let me know. Whether those brushes can still be bought, I have no idea. But I prefer teaching with brushes that you can find at any art store. Display those bristles. And remember, the more damp your brush, the more transparent the paint's going to be. So try not to make it too damp. You can see you're gonna have to do quite a bit on this. Just try not to go too deep of a step, like from like say this to that. That'd be too much. You need to get some stuff happening in between. Let it dry, then come in and do some more. And don't forget to keep splaying out the brush. You can get those individual hairs. But you can see the bottom layer shows through and it affects, see I put too much paint here. The bottom layer shows through and affects each additional layer that you put up on top. And then you can keep going and going and going till you get to the right detail. Now I didn't rinse my brush this time. And take your time doing this. I'm going really, really fast because we're approaching an hour. Or, no, I think we're over an hour. Okay, so you're going to keep doing that. And now I can already see that this is nowhere near pink enough. I would have, going through the analysis, this is more of a the transparency issue of the bottom layer affecting each additional layer you put on top. The first layer, letting it dry, I would turn around and say, okay, is it lighter, darker, brighter, duller, more transparent, or more opaque? And then which way does, the color wheel? Asking those questions with every layer that I put on top. So I already, you can tell, I didn't even do the analysis on the first layer because I would have said immediately, ooh, it's not red enough. Am I screwed? No. No. Oh, you know what? Ava and Wolf, if you're watching, Grandma says sorry. Bad word. Oops. Take a little bit of Permanent Alizarin Crimson. Put that into your value. Get a swatch card first. Oh, see? I had to make sure I got that swatch card first. But look how close it is. Looking at that, I'm going, that is flippin' pink. But based on that photograph here, oh, okay, you know what? It's pretty close. But I don't believe, I don't believe in this color mixture here. I don't believe it. I don't believe it's an accurate color mixture. Or an accurate representation. Because dogs aren't red like this. It's the light reflection outside, or it's just that this is a raw photo and the camera was overcompensating. So I put this color here, and now I can see the pink, but you probably can't on camera. So I'm going to turn around. And as this is drying, it's too red. I would turn around and add a little bit of blue. Now this is something I would have done with the first layer of color, the analysis. Now I'm showing you with, oh, I forgot to do the analysis. Now what do I do? Well, now I'm trying to color match that. Turn around, display the hairs, and now you're going to put this color on top. And what it's going to do is going to put a little bit of that pinky overcast onto it. See? It's not ideal, but if you spent, 3 hours and you forgot to analyze the color, you don't want to go back from scratch and start all over again. Just take that color mix the way it should be, and then you're going to do the analysis again, and then just apply it. Just make sure you have a little bit of water in your brush for this to make it more transparent. That way you're not going to completely cover up the strokes that are underneath. This is glazing, applying a transparent layer of color. Okay, then you can keep going. Add more white. Ideally not when you're overlapping colors on your palette, because yeah. Now I'm going to go a huge step. Really with a lot of white. Just to show you. Wait for it to dry. I'm using my airplane stroke. What is that? Ooh! I got paint on my phone. The other thing to remember, when you're painting, depending on how big it's going to be, you can't see individual hairs here. So try not to paint individual hairs with a tiny little brush and paint individual hairs. It's not like that. Where you can really see that, if you look at, the master wildlife artist, I always refer to Bateman, who is the king of wildlife painting. And when I say wildlife, it also applies to dogs, horses, and anything that is an animal, birds, whatever. Okay, and then a bit more white. And when you get down to almost just pure white, be very particular where you're putting that pure white. So I would put more of the white on this side where the light is really hitting it, but you don't want to, make sure that you add water so it's still transparent, because you don't want to cover it up. Because what you're going to end up, if you have too much white and it's too opaque, you're going to end up with that. And now you can't see all the underlying strokes, all those, the fur detail. Make sure you just touch, push, lift, and you're not trying to cover everything. Now, if you did put too much paint, Can you fix it? Of course you can. Just go back a couple of steps, darken it, add it back in, then start adding white, and then go back. There's always a way with acrylics to fix, if you've added too much paint, to just reverse back a couple of steps, darken it, paint it, let it dry, then start lightening it and adding your layers. Okay? So you can see it's coming along. Wait for it to dry. I can't move that up anymore. Wait for it to dry, and then you can do your adjustments from there. Now this is one of the things. I'm looking at the monitor. Shadow. See that color right here? I'm looking at the monitor and it is so bright. That's because of the light. It's a glare. See? So if I were to come back to do this tomorrow and I move my light, I'm going to go, oh, I need to fix everything. Versus having that. That's what you see on the monitor. What I see here, there is no glare. So remember, the adjustments if you're watching a video and you're trying to make the color adjustments and all that stuff, use the ideas and apply it to what you see in front of you. Don't try to match to what's on the screen because, sorry, it's gonna be different. Same thing with the glares. See, all this stuff is glare, but as soon as I tilt it, you can see this. That looks really, really bright and intense. But when you tilt it, when you get rid of that direct light, it's not so intense. It's a little bit darker. And see, look at how red the screen is versus when I put it here. And then the camera or the phone, what's that called? The auto brightness. That's where the auto brightness, it changes the brightness of the screen. You can turn that off, which is probably a good idea if you're color matching to a photograph. But just remember to apply the concepts to what's in front of you, not to what's on your screen. But see how when it's darkened now? And I'm looking at this now, and looking at this, you know what? Squinting your eyes, what does your eyelashes kind of touch, and it blurs out all the detail, and you see really the massive shapes. I'm squinting my eyes and thinking, you know what? This is too light now. What do? I would just go back and mix my original color, less white, so add a bit more blue and a little bit more burnt sienna to this, a little bit more crimson, which is less white. Or if you have an actual pile of paint of the pure color, just pick up some of that pure color just to show you an example, and then come in, not dark enough. I was mixing in the wrong area. I'm trying to rush now because I'm going to be running out of space on my SD card. There we go. And you're going to slowly, and you're just going to apply a layer like this and let it dry. So make sure each layer has time to dry. This is too gray because I picked up that. But you get the idea, right? So when you're doing your accent layers, it's going to be affected by everything that's underneath it. I'm looking at this now going, oh, Jesus, Gisele, it's too dark. You got to let it dry. Then you can come back with a little bit of a lighter color and then make your adjustment. It's always about adjustments. And unless you're painting an abstract, pet portraits, especially if you're painting it for somebody else, is probably one of the hardest things to do because you're looking for perfection. And the unfortunate thing is, and I have some students that were trying to paint portraits while learning of their friends' family and pets and all that stuff. And that was one thing I would never, ever, ever recommend. When you're learning, take some random photo off of, go to Pixabay or Pexels or Unsplash and pick a photo from there and learn by using those photos if you have to work from a photo. Do not ever try to learn, especially in the beginning, to paint or draw whatever from a family member, because you're going to be looking for perfection. And then when you show that family member, depending on their style, they're going to go, that looks nothing like me, or that looks nothing like my dog. Learn in the beginning with reference material that you're not attached to. Then once you've mastered that, then you can apply that to a portrait of a family member or a pet that's a family member. It takes the pressure, the perfection pressure off of your shoulders. Okay, and then just, so doing those adjustments, let it dry, and then you're going to come in. And I truly believe that the color that I'm using is a more accurate representation of the value of that dog instead of this red violet overcast. I don't know. I would turn around and ask, is this really the color, or is this just because the camera was overcompensating? A lot of the times with these cameras on automatic, it overcompensates. That's actually pretty good fur technique. I don't know if you guys can see that. See, there's that glare. Oops. Oh, everything's in reverse for me. There we go. But you see, just by building it up, and from there, I would say and okay, so if we go back to this, I would just use less blue in this one here. This one here was more the burnt umber for the darkness. So I would just do this one with the same mixture, except use burnt umber, and this one here, the same mixture, but use burnt sienna, just because these ones here are outside, and it's more on the reddish side. So, and then you've got a little bit of the violet. And don't forget that although you may not notice it, you can take artistic license, and with the snow, now I can definitely tell that there's an overcast on this, a red violet overcast. I can turn around and say, as the artist, I'm going to change that overcast, and I'm not going to make it so red. It could be a sunset. I don't know. But I can turn around, and you can do this in Snapseed, and you can change the the color temperature of this to make it more on the red side. Come on. So if I go into the light, and no, I don't want to, this is not going to be a lesson on, there we go. This is not going to be a lesson on Lightroom. But I can change the color temperature to make it a little bit warmer. Like if I go to the extreme, I mean, you're not going to do that, but you can turn around, see, more blue. And just going to make it a little bit more yellow. And then the tint, I can also make it a little bit more neutral. Now the dogs are warmer, which makes more sense. Because if you have a dog that's a lot more of a chocolate brown dog, are they more blue? Depends. With the amount of brown in the dog, I'm thinking they're more on the brown side. And then the vibrance, I can turn around, well, I can make it duller, see? Or really intense. So I'm going to dull that down just a little bit. And then the saturation, if you knock out all the saturation, turns it to black and white. And if you bump up the saturation, it makes it in full color. But just to change it a little bit, then you can go into, there's then color settings where you can turn around and change it to more of a blue cast. There's all these different that is perfect right there. That's a actual, I knew that's going to happen. Oops, I didn't want this to be a lesson in Lightroom, but just to show you, I've got these presets for puppies. There we go, look at that. Look at that. So we just go through just to show you that it does affect, that's black and white. It does affect the colors. That's a nice one there, squeaky clean. Let me just go in. That's a little dark. That's a little light. Sorry, let me just, there we go. Rotate. There we are. Now I can see the colors. Look at that. Not so much of a red overcast. There's just a little bit of a violet, not a heck of a lot. But that preset overwrote everything that I just did. And yeah, but so you can do the same thing in the Snapseed, or I think Visco's the other one. But just to manipulate the photo so it helps you. So the first thing is you put the photo into a black and white. That way you can see the values. It's much easier to see the values in black and white first. And then you have your color version. And then if you know, like for me, if I would just been given this, I say paint this, I would have turned around for sure and get rid of all that pink overtone. Because you can say, well, it was in the sunset, but you don't see the sunset. So unless you actually paint the sunset on top, it's not going to make any sense. And that's my right as an artist to make that decision. But if the person says, well, these two dogs were in a sunset, and although you can't see the sunset, I don't want you to change the color. Well, personally, myself, I would have said, no, thank you. I'm not going to take that job. But if you want to match it exact, use the photo exactly the way it is. But as an artist, you have the artistic license to manipulate your material, whether it's a model that you're changing her position, or a dog. Well, painting a dog live is really hard, but changing the lighting, changing the position, draping fabric, whatever. You're manipulating the model to make it more pleasing. You can do the same thing with a photograph. Okay, you can do the exact same thing with the photograph. So don't feel like you have to only work with what's in front of you. For this little guy here, come on. Okay, why aren't you changing? Because I'm in preview mode. Sorry. Why aren't you? There we go. So with this little guy here, the photograph itself is very dark, but I think that works because I think this is a chair or a table. It looks like he's hiding, so you can make it like a secret hiding spot. But I can turn around with the presets if I wanted to make it brighter, there where you can see where the true highlights are. It's much easier to see the highlights when you manipulate the photograph. Okay? But don't be afraid about using filters on, apps for your whatever phone you're using, or tablet or whatever. If you have Lightroom Class or Lightroom CC, you won't go wrong, but it's not free. Anyways, that's it. So I hope, Jackie, that this helps you. And I know this was a long video, but you're on the right track with your colors. But I would probably stick, with using black, you can take black and then basically add any color to that to change it, but it's going to be very, very opaque. So you would have to really adjust that. And black always flattens things out. I'm not a fan of using black. And then let me just add the white to that so you can see. It's flat. It's dull. So, if that's what you need, that's fine. But I would stick with the burnt umbers, burnt siennas, the alizarin crimson, the ultramarine blue. I don't think I would go with the Naphthal Red Light. Now, I say that based on what's in front of me. What you have in front of you is a completely different story. But for me, doing my tests here, burnt umber, burnt sienna, permanent alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, phthalo green, I have it. I don't have to go out and buy it. I have it. I might use it to dull things down a little bit depending on the areas, like back here. But it's, it all depends. So with that, the only exception to what I just said, permanent alizarin crimson. True permanent alizarin crimson is fugitive by nature. It fades quickly in the light. So good paint manufacturers have come up with their own version of permanent alizarin crimson based on their, based on their thing. DecoArt's permanent alizarin crimson is PR177. It's a single pigment. Okay? A lot of manufacturers, they mix different reds together to come up with a mix. That's not saying it's wrong. But whatever brand that you find that you like the permanent alizarin crimson, stick with that as close as possible. That way you're not having to adjust. It's a very hard color to replicate because basically it's a red that leans towards blue. The closest way that I could replicate permanent alizarin crimson is by taking Naphthal Red Light, Naphthal Red, which is more neutral, and adding a bit of, whether it's quinacridone magenta or a bit of blue, but it doesn't get as close. You can try red violet, but that's too violet. So if you find, and this is always a staple color, especially if you're painting portraits, this is a staple color. But whatever brand you use, try to stick with that if at all possible. So that's the only thing. So you may have an alizarin crimson at home and trying the mixtures and it's not working. Unless you're using Deco Traditions permanent alizarin crimson, it's not going to match what I have. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to make a few more adjustments. Maybe yours is weaker, maybe yours is stronger, maybe yours is more red, maybe yours is more blue. So as long as you understand where the colors sit on the color wheel, you just make those adjustments to come up with something that matches what you're working with. Okay? I know we covered a lot in this lesson. And to be honest with you, this thing that I just covered could have been an actual class, a 3-hour class, because it goes so deep. Unless you already know the foundations of color mixing, a lot of this may not make sense. But I know, Jackie, you had watched a lot of the color mixing videos already, so you already have a lot of the foundation understood, and you're on the right track. It's just the balancing act of the colors of where they're sitting on the color wheel. I believe that's where you're getting stuck. Again, you were saying about a liver color. Ugh. The liver's gross, but a liver color. So to me, a liver is more of a burnt sienna, burnt umber kind of mixture there, but it could be the lighting. So where you're doing your painting, is your lighting more blue? Is it more daylight, or is it more of a yellow light? If you can, try to have a balanced light. So if you have two light fixtures, two light whatever, like up here my light, it's a cool light, cool LED, but up here I have a warm light, and then the two together come up with a natural light, a natural bright light. I used to do everything with the 6500 Kelvin, and everything had a blue tone to it. I was color matching everything with a blue tone. But if you're working with ambient light, that warm incandescent light, everything's going to be orange. You want to try to get a balance of the two if possible. And that will also help. And if you're not sure, take whatever you're painting, take your swatches, take your painting, and then go into different rooms in your home and see how it adjusts. And then if you find that whatever room you're in, maybe your kitchen, and the colors look more true, take a look at your ceiling. What lights are on? Do you have a large window or a patio door that's letting in natural light, which is more blue light? Do you have more warm light in your kitchen, which is, casting a warm tone? Take a look at the lighting. Lighting is key when it comes to art. So take a look at that. But yeah, so, you're on the right path. It's just the balancing act of the colors. And where, if I was working on this piece here, I would not even use carbon black. I would not use Naphthal Red Light. I would stick with burnt umber, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and white. That's it. And it's just a matter of mixing the colors. But I would not use a photograph. I would use a digital print. First get the black and white version, then throw that in Lightroom, then throw it in to Lightroom and work with some tones. Not so much this one. This little guy here is pretty good. This one here is the one that I would do the most adjustment on, because the overcast is affecting the color. But just, getting rid of a lot of that red tone, or when you're painting, just kind of block that out. So look at that. It's adjusting. Yeah. So I have to turn that off. I have to turn that feature off. So just mask some stuff out and, paint it based on how you feel about the piece and go from there. So there's a lot of moving parts in here, and I hope that this helps. But if you have any other questions, just fire me off an email. You can go to artplace.ca, click the contact link, and go from there. And I can do a follow-up lesson. But if any of you guys want to see a video using those specialty brushes I was talking about, let me know in the comments below, or head to the website and leave me a comment. And if you want to see more detailed videos like this, hit the like and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the lessons, and that also lets me know what you guys want to see. Alrighty, so I'm going to leave you with that, and look forward to hearing from some feedback. And until I see you in the next lesson, stay inspired.